Welcome back to another episode of Inside Access Control, sponsored by SIA. Very excited today to have Björkdahl join me. He's with Access, but he's also the chairman of the steering committee when it comes to ONVIF. So Per, thank you very much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you, Lee, for having me. It's always interesting to explore these new types of virtual meetings that you can arrange.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how what before was seen as not something people would do. Now it's the norm. So I guess exciting times when it comes to things like that. As long as we jump into it. But so the conversation today is around ONVIF, and I would say most people in our industry know ONVIF from the video side, but there's also work that's been done on the access control side. And as the industry goes more mainstream, there's the conventional wisdom around this, and typically what you see from outside of other industries is the need for standardization in order for simplification, like a lot of benefits, which we'll jump into. But it's a normal process of what happens within an industry, and happy to hear that ONVIF, not only for video, but also has access control. So as the chairman, I thought it'd be great to have you come on and speak a little bit about what actually ONVIF does for access control and a little bit of background. So if you don't mind, do you mind giving a little bit of background on yourself, and then also then jump in on ONVIF, and then we'll talk about the standard?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if there's something that sort of triggers your interest, you can just interrupt me and ask more questions. Well, ONVIF started back in 2008 and to join the IP video industry. And at that time, it was sort of pretty fragmented. All different manufacturers had their own proprietary sort of protocols. There wasn't any common API. And if you compare that with the analog industry, where everyone was using the same type of electrical standard to connect devices, that sort of was seen a little bit as a hurdle for the industry to really take off. So that's when the three companies, Axis, Bosch, and Sony, came together and founded ONVIF. And since then, we just had nothing but success, and of course, as a result of very hard work. And I think it's quite natural connection between access control and video. I think that's where it really started, with using video to do verification and access control. I mean, we're talking maybe 30 years back. And then I think also the evolution of access control systems, because they were more on the front barrier of buildings and stuff. They grew into something which was, I believe, justified to be extremely proprietary. And it's been a little bit tough for newcomers in the industry to break those, how should we say, proprietary, the proprietary approach of that. So since a few years back, ONVIF started to look at how can we contribute with standardized APIs also for the access control industry. We have quite a lot of integrators in the video industry that actually do integrate certain amount of access control into the system, and they have to do that like a special development for every instance. So we thought that if we sort of open up and make it easy to integrate a few cameras and a few doors into the known world of ONVIF, it makes it easier for the ONVIF members, specifically the VMS people, to integrate. And we got a few of the larger names on our member list, so they engaged in the work, and we came out with a very simple profile, which was more or less doing exactly what I said, being able to open doors, check status, not really a control system or an access control system. It's more being able to interact with an access control system. And from that, we then expanded into a second profile where we put a little bit more emphasis on being able to build a smaller access control system, not as sophisticated as the ones we know. And we're on that path really to enable individual manufacturers that might have some interesting feature, it could be a design feature or something, to be able to interconnect with other systems, really putting the freedom of choice with the end user. Very much like we do with the cameras, because all cameras are not the same. They're not alike. Even if you, by looking at them, they might look to be very, very much alike. You might have some specific requirements on things. So giving the opportunity to mix and match between manufacturers, we figured that would be a great way forward. And this was supported by those larger members we have in the access control area. But it's been a bit slow though.
Yeah, no, I apologize for that. But
Yeah.
before we get into that, because that's actually I do want to get into the meat of the adoption on that side. But when you look at the sort of the makeup of what you're talking about, so this is the communication, if you would, the standardization around like how controllers talk to readers and readers talk to panels and that, correct? So it's
No,
okay.
no, it's not
I
it's
want
not
to
the
make
entire
sure people understand what it
topography. Yeah, I mean, if you look at a video system, you have a camera and you have a video management system. That's pretty simple. The video connects directly to the VMS. But when it comes to access control system, the door itself is a little system. And that little system at a door connects to a controller that connects to the access control system. So what ONVIF is focusing on, or actually what ONVIF is the communication between the controllers and the system above that. And sort of keypads, locks and stuff, that connects to the controller. And there are other standards for that, like OSDP, which is sort of gaining traction right now. So we're sort of stayed at the controller to system level.
Okay, good. That's why I wanted a clarification,
Yeah.
because I know there's been some confusion around exactly where it was. Does this compete with OSDP? Does it not? Like all of that. So thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Now, you brought up before on the adoption side. So can you speak a little bit to where, what is the state of it currently now? And then let's get into like, what do you think needs to happen in order for more adoption like this to increase?
It's a tricky question. If I knew, I think I would have told someone and it would have already
I'm sure
happened.
you have
But
some
yeah,
ideas around it.
I have some ideas. And I think basically it's about that. Very few people buy larger access control systems sort of greenfield. Either it's a company merger or you start with something and then you add on and then you're sort of, I mean, most of the system, they work well. So the ability to interconnect from different manufacturers, it doesn't really fix a functional problem. So it's maybe harder, maybe it's a little bit of a struggle for the end users to say, I want this manufacturer's panel at my front door because I think it looks nice.
Right.
Because then the supplier of that specific access control system in that building will say, well, that's very complicated because it's not one of ours. You maybe have to compromise some security or whatever, because it has to be like a unique development to make that happen.
Right.
So our idea is that, and hope is that the end users are getting more power. We hear that from user groups. We hear it from analysts saying that number of building owners, they put a more effort in saying, I want this specific piece of equipment at this specific place,
Right.
and it has to integrate with the rest.
Yeah.
So we're sort of hoping that the acceptance for a mixed manufacturer system would be there. And there is nothing saying that you have to compromise anything from security or anything.
No, not at all. I guess let me ask you this too, though. So it's interesting to me because I feel like our industry focuses so heavily on the high end security side of the business, right? That even the comment that you made around the greenfield opportunities that are out there. It's interesting to me because I've been thinking a lot about it lately, and I feel like, especially through this pandemic, coming out of it, you're starting to see, I think, more mainstream adoption or interest, to say, beyond just the high security side, where you have a lot of older, sort of entrenched incumbents that are in that space, but that sort of middle market enterprise side that I think when you talk about the end users, especially when you talk about building, I mean, the tenants, if you would, going to start to drive some of the adoption of the shell of the systems. And I wonder if on that end, the standardization that they're going to demand and ask for, plus new entrants into that space that will, they're going to look at things like ONVIF and OSDP and the rest and be like, great, I use standards and other stuff, and this makes it a lot easier for me to go. So I'm just going to grab that. To where I wonder if, as the industry goes more mainstream, we move beyond just the high-end security side of it, if actually this starts to open up a broader marketplace where standards are a bit more accepted.
I hope what you say is going to happen actually, because I mean, if you look at the larger office complex with multi-tenant buildings, it's normally the individual tenants that is responsible and maintaining their own access control systems. So it's not the same type of system in the entire building, and it happens quite often. You start out small and you expand into somebody else's sort of arena, and then maybe five years later down the line, you have to go back to the original supplier to be able to make that extension. And everybody in the industry knows that that's going to be slightly costly because they're maintaining something which is maybe a little bit out of date, etc. So with these standards coming into this, and especially if the end users get to know about the availability of standards, they should not be or don't have to be that concerned anymore, because they know I can pick and choose from any manufacturer. And I mean, you said something that maybe this pandemic had made us think differently about things. Maybe someone suddenly wants a contactless access point or entry point at the front door for his employees, and his specific supplier doesn't have that. If you have standards like ONVIF or OSTP, then you can pick something else from a manufacturer that does have that capability, and you can stick it onto the same system and it works. So I think it's a way of thinking, and the more requests that you get from the user community around this, or especially larger user organizations, I think this will be more and more asked for.
I agree. The awareness side of it is actually a huge part of that. If the end users start asking for it, it will drive the adoption or the acceptance, if you would, of doing a new thing. If it doesn't happen, the belief is, in my opinion, that then they don't want it when it's actually, I don't think that's true, but there's no incentive, if you would, belief that they need to change. In our industry, is slow to change when it comes to that stuff, and so
it is, and the systems out there, they're very good. Even the proprietors are really good.
Correct.
So it's hard. It doesn't really fix an obvious problem by introducing a standard.
Well, I would argue that what's interesting to me on that side too is it's not fixing a problem for the manufacturers. It fixes a problem for the end user.
Yes.
And if we are putting the end user, and we are end user centric and putting them in the center, these things would become more, if we're being honest. The issue I think here is that the walled garden proprietary approach, everyone, again, in that high security marketplace, like I think you could, the days of saying, here's the 80% of the system, the last 20% I don't care about, right? As long as I get the 80 to where this allows maybe to fill out the 100% because I can plug and play parts and pieces that we see in other industries.
Yeah, but we also meet consultants in the access control industry that's looking at access control in a totally different new way, looking at it a little bit from an IoT point of view, where an access control device becomes a resource in a different way than it is in a traditional access control system.
Yep, 100%.
You have shared meeting spaces, stuff like this, and you need to sort of make personal reservations through things. So the information gathered by an access control device sometimes needs to be shared. And if we look at the energy usage, I mean, in big parts of the world, you have to sort of blast the place with air conditioning, which is costly. So the occupancy, or noting what company is occupying a specific zone and how many people are there, becomes more and more important. And the world we're heading at with the environment, I think these matters are really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, it's this whole, we've been talking about access control as a feature of a much larger value proposition, and this idea of going beyond the locking and unlocking, which really our world has been the proprietary side of locking and unlocking. Like, we've got that to where now these products, as they do become IoT, they're edge devices, and the data and the stuff that works with it, a much larger, if you would, let's say, like a building operating system of how it functions. This is a core utility that's part of that it's no longer like, hey, leave this thing alone because it's about safety, and if you mess with it, somebody may bring a gun into our building. Now it's like, how does this hardware and this software and the help me operate better, and the business continuity and green and the rest. So 100% agree. So it's funny because I think when the value changes, it's not about the locking and unlocking only. And at that point, some of the old let's call it power. I call them power structures, the thought process that we have to own that and control that in order to have value. The value shifts, so you can maybe give up on that stuff over there, and leverage different value creation somewhere else, to where standardizing and connectivity isn't seen as a differentiator anymore, or a value statement. It's seen as actually the old way of doing things.
Yeah. And I think in scenarios like that, the standard for these basic sort of functions and features, that is really an enabler for smaller, smarter, innovative companies that come in with these solutions, because they still have to do this unlock and lock part of it.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Plus all the extra stuff.
Yeah.
So if we can establish the sort of the base layer in a standardized way, and everyone knows and trusts that it works, then you create a whole new world of innovation.
Yep.
You enable that innovation. Yeah.
Yep. Speed of innovation, the rest of it going. I mean, that's crazy to me, is that this is not like this is a new idea either, right? Like this is they've shown this in many different areas of the world, where in disciplines.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at USB memories, you can look at phones, you can look at anything, or even internet. Once you have the standard and everyone adopts it, it's boom, it's just happening.
Yeah, I think that internet thing might stick around.
Yeah, for a while.
All right, Per. Well, if people want to find out more information, where's the best place to go?
They go to the website of ONVIF, onvif.org. And then if you're a techie, you can read the specifications and find out how it works. There are a lot of press releases of things. Under normal circumstances, we go to exhibitions and you can meet us and talk to us. But there's a lot of reading to be found at the onvif.org. And if you have any questions, you can drop an email through that portal as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, a ton of great resources and a lot of information. So, well, Per, thank you for doing this. I could talk to you about this stuff all day long, but I definitely see the value in it. The adoption, I do think you're on the right side of history, if you would, of where things are going to go. So it's never easy to blaze trails. But I appreciate the work that because this is not your necessarily day job. You have that at Access Communications, but I appreciate the effort and the time that you put into doing this. So thank you for taking the time.
And thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.